Chapter 1877. A group of people walked over, and Sun Da-wang hurriedly went up to greet them, shouting, "Father, look who I brought you." The leader of the group was an old man with a white beard, but his muscles were strong, as if they were filled with explosive power. The wrinkles on his face also seemed to contain power. In short, this old man didn't look old at all. He was the chief of the Earth Traveler race, Sun Da-wang's father, Sun Jiugong. He looked up and sized up Tang Zheng and Bai Luo. His gaze swept past Bai Luo and settled on Tang Zheng, a strange look flashing through his eyes. He couldn't see through Tang Zheng. He already knew that he was a saint, but he couldn't see through a person. It was clear how serious this was. This old man has poor eyesight and has been cooped up here for many years. I don't know the world and experts of the outside world. May I know who you two are? Sun Jiugong said after some consideration. Sun Da-wang hurriedly introduced. This is Tang Zheng. He's very powerful. This is Bai Luo, Bai Luo anxiously glared at him. Sun Da-wang shrunk his neck and chuckled, whispering into his father's ear. Sun Jiugong's eyes flashed with surprise, and his gaze toward Bai Luo also changed. There seemed to be more kindness and friendliness. Bai Luo anxiously stomped her foot. Just what did Sun Da-wang say? Sun Da-wang chuckled, ignoring Bai Luo's threatening gaze. Sun Jiugong said loudly, "Honored guests have come from afar, so please stay here first. My son will show you the splendor of our underground world." Tang Zheng nodded. Guests will follow the host's wishes. Then we'll follow Chief Sun's arrangements. He was neither servile nor overbearing, neither too fast nor too slow. His temperament was subduing, causing others to look at him in a new light. "Then come with me. I'll show you our world. This is the only place. There's no such thing outside," Sun Da-wang said, as if he was presenting a treasure. After the few of them left, everyone immediately started talking at once. "Chief, who are these two people? Why did you let them stay? No outsiders have ever come to our world. Isn't this too much of a joke?" Sun Jiugong said with a smile, "That's not right. Da-wang has taken a fancy to that girl." Huh? Everyone was shocked and congratulated him one after another. "Congratulations, clan leader. Da-wang has finally brought back a wife. The Earth Traveler tribe has a successor." Sun Jiugong stroked his beard. He had a son at an old age, but his son's marriage was still a worry for him. This time, he was filial and brought back a wife from outside. Sun Jiugong laughed out loud. "That girl can stay, but what about the other one? That's a man. That's right. He's an outsider. We can't let him stay." Sun Jiugong's smile faded as he solemnly said, "Don't you see that this person's background is very big? How powerful can his background be? We, the Earth Traveler race, are content with our territory. Even if the God race comes, we won't lower ourselves. With such a ferocious person on the main peak, we won't provoke him. He didn't provoke us either, so what do we have to be afraid of?" Sun Jiugong nodded and said earnestly, "You are right, but I think this person is not ordinary, so I want to see what his purpose is." Everyone felt apprehensive and asked, "Could he be coveting our Earth Traveler race's treasures?" Everyone knows that our Earth Traveler race has many treasures. Who knows how many people covet them? Sun Jiugong didn't comment and said, "Let's see first. Since Da-wang met them, he must know a bit about them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought them back so rashly." The patriarch made the final decision. Even if everyone had objections, they could only swallow them back into their stomachs. Sun Da-wang was forcibly called back by his father, even though he always wanted to stay by Bai Luo's side. "Father, I'm with Bai Luo right now. Why'd you call me back?" Sun Da-wang asked in dissatisfaction. Sun Jiugong said seriously, "I have business with you. It won't be too late for you to go to the romance later." Sun Da-wang's eyes lit up as he preemptively asked, "Do you want to know about Tang Zheng's background?" "Ha, my son knows me best," Sun Da-wang said with a matter-of-fact expression. "No one knows a father better than a son. How can I not know? I've been waiting for you to ask." "Stinking brat." Sun Jiugong comforted him and glared at him with a smile. Sun Da-wang narrated every detail of his encounter with Tang Zheng in detail. He emphasized his encounter with the person on the main peak and didn't leave out a single detail. Sun Dazhuang analyzed. Tang Zheng's origins are too mysterious. He definitely isn't simple. Since he wanted to come to the Earth Traveler race, I brought him here. I have a feeling that he has a purpose for coming here. Perhaps it's not a bad thing for our Earth Traveler race. Father, you didn't see how he faced the person on the main peak. He wasn't afraid at all. Moreover, the two of them had an agreement. They seemed to be evenly matched competitors. Evenly matched. Sun Jiugong's eyelids twitched fiercely. That person is in the God Race realm. Tang Zheng is evenly matched with him. This is too inconceivable. Yes, I think so too. Sun Dezhuang nodded heavily and said doubtfully, but I had this feeling at the time. He seemed to know that person very well and wasn't afraid of him at all. Only if he was strong enough would he not be afraid of that person. Sun Jiugong looked pensive. Dazhuang, your information is very important and your analysis is very reasonable. You finally know how to use your brain and not blindly act recklessly. Sun Dazhuang's face turned red as he argued. How can I only act recklessly? I've always known how to use my brain. No matter how strong this person is, he can't be underestimated. Since he's come, I naturally can't keep dragging this out. I'll observe him for a few days and then probe his intentions. Tang Zheng and Bai Luo had been in the underground world for several days. Tang Zheng was quite happy and content as he admired the local customs of the underground world. Because the Earth Traveler race was generally short, their architectural style and other unusual items were a size smaller. However, their items were all very exquisite. The Earth Traveler race was nimble and dexterous. Although they were all big and burly, and even the women were no exception, they were very clever. Many of the items they made were breathtaking. Of course, there was another point that made Tang Zheng's eyes light up. The Earth Traveler race had many treasures. Whether it was a normal person or a prominent person, their houses were decorated with many gems. After the initial novelty passed, Bai Luo became sullen. Sun Dazhuang stayed close to her almost every day, which made her very angry. However, she was not afraid of being beaten or scolded. He was like a dogskin plaster that she could not do anything about. Tang Zheng looked on with a smile. A good girl was afraid of being pestered. Sun Dazhuang seemed to have set his eyes on her. In time, he might really be able to get Bai Luo. At that time, Bai Luo had resolutely chosen to leave with Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was grateful and decided to help her. Her cultivation was too low, so Tang Zheng decided to teach her the heavenly god arts and build a divine bridge. Bai Luo was confused, but after hearing Tang Zheng teach her the heavenly god arts, she immediately realized how extraordinary this ability was. She asked in astonishment, "What kind of ability is this?" "Heavenly god arts." Bai Luo was confused. Clearly, she had never heard of the heavenly god arts at her level. Chapter 1878. Sun Jiugong was in a daze, his expression fluctuating as he muttered to himself, "Heavenly God technique. He actually knows about the heavenly God technique. Who is it?" Bai Luo turned pale with fright when she heard the voice outside. Bang! With a sweep of Bai Luo's palm, the door opened, revealing Sun Jiugong to the two of them. Tang Zheng was unperturbed. He had long since noticed Sun Jiugong standing outside. As for him teaching Bai Luo the heavenly God technique, he did not hide it from him and instead deliberately told him. Now it seemed that Sun Jiugong really did know about the heavenly God technique. Could it be that he also wanted to cultivate to become a god, like the Fengdu Necropolis Lord? "So it's you, clan leader Sunday." Bai Luo was a little embarrassed and bowed slightly. Tang Zheng only nodded slightly and did not say a word. Sun Jiugong's face turned red. He was caught eavesdropping and hurriedly explained, "I just arrived. I didn't mean to eavesdrop." Tang Zheng waved his hand and said enigmatically, "It's fine, it's not a secret. I didn't mean to hide it from clan leader Sunday." Hearing this, Sun Jiugong let out a sigh of relief. But he couldn't help but be curious and asked, "This isn't a secret?" Back then, a peerless genius appeared in the god realm, but unfortunately, he fell. Although not many people know about it, there are still people who know about it. I'm sure clan leader Sun is one of them, right? Tang Zheng asked. Sun Jiugong hesitated for a moment, then nodded and admitted, "Yes, I was fortunate enough to meet him back then, but I didn't receive his true teachings. Later on, the heavenly god technique was lost. I went through many twists and turns to ask around, but I couldn't find any clues." "Where did you get it from?" "It's natural for clan leader's son to suspect the authenticity of the heavenly god technique. As for its origin, I can't say too much. As for its authenticity, I'll pass it to you and you'll know." Tang Zheng was natural and unrestrained, not intending to hide the heavenly god technique. This greatly shocked Sun Jiugong. The heavenly god technique was so important, yet Tang Zheng wanted to pass it to him. This was too generous. Sun Jiugong did not know what to do and said, "The art of the heavenly god is too important. How can it be passed on so easily?" Tang Zheng smiled nonchalantly and said, "Perhaps that person thought that the heavenly god arts were too important, so he didn't spread it out in time, causing a bright pearl to be covered in dust. Tang Zheng, would never do such a thing. What's more, if no one cultivates it, no matter how powerful the heavenly god technique is, it's useless." Sun Jiugong was deeply moved as he was convinced by Tang Zheng's words. Bai Luo had never heard of the heavenly god technique, so she thought it was an ordinary divine ability. Only after hearing their conversation did she realize the value of the heavenly god technique. "Tang Zheng, the heavenly god technique is so important. Are you really going to teach it to me?" Bai Luo asked doubtfully. For cultivators, any kind of supernatural power was extremely precious. Most people would not easily pass it on to outsiders because it was the key to their own victory. However, Tang Zheng did not hide anything at all, which greatly subverted their understanding. Tang Zheng handed over the jade slips he had prepared beforehand to the two, saying, "The heavenly god technique is in these jade slips. The heavenly god technique is a method to build a divine bridge and reach the deity realm." The two received the jade slips and impatiently immersed themselves in it. They were immediately shocked by the heavenly god technique's miraculous effects and were petrified on the spot. After a while, the two seemed to have woken up from a dream and looked at Tang Zheng with tears of gratitude. Sun Jiugong's tears flowed freely, saying, "Hearing the Tao in the morning, dying in the evening can be content. Now that I have the fate to see the heavenly god technique, I can die without regrets." Tang Zheng smiled. "Just looking at it isn't enough. You still have to cultivate it." Sun Jiugong's expression dimmed, saying, "The heavenly god technique is indeed miraculous, but cultivating it requires the power of faith. Otherwise, it won't be able to build a divine bridge and raise one's cultivation. Although the divine world is big, the power of faith is unique to the divine race. We don't have any power of faith, so there's no way to cultivate the heavenly god technique." Sun Jiugong couldn't hide his disappointment. Bai Luo's expression stiffened and her head drooped. Tang Zheng laughed loudly. What's so difficult about the power of faith?" With a tap of his finger, two streams of energy shot out and entered the two's bodies. Everything happened so quickly that Bai Luo didn't even have time to react. Sun Jiugong's thick eyebrows rose, but it was too late for him to resist. He could only watch as the two streams of energy entered his body. If Tang Zheng was an enemy, he would definitely have died on the spot. Sun Jiugong was shocked, wondering just how high Tang Zheng's cultivation had to be able to do this. Bai Luo anxiously asked, "What is this thing?" She discovered that there was an extra stream of energy in her body, but it didn't harm her, so she couldn't help but be curious. "The power of faith." Tang Zheng casually said these four words. Sun Jiugong and Bai Luo cried out in unison, "Power of faith?" Tang Zheng said with a smile, "This power of faith is enough for you to cultivate for a while and raise your cultivation. In the future, when you've used it all up, I'll give you more." The way the two looked at Tang Zheng changed again and again, as if they didn't recognize him. Was power of faith so easy to obtain? Why did Tang Zheng's tone sound like it was easy to obtain? This completely overturned their understanding of the world. How do you have so much power of faith? Sun Jiugong couldn't help but ask. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. You only need to know that you don't need to worry about power of faith and can focus on cultivating the heavenly god arts. Not only can you cultivate the heavenly god arts, but everyone in the Earth Traveler tribe can cultivate the heavenly god arts. Then, they all have power of faith. Sun Jiugong blurted out. Tang Zheng nodded. Sun Jiugong felt a little dizzy. The world was changing too quickly. Was power of faith a cabbage? It could be obtained so easily. In this god realm, I'm the only one who can provide you with so much power of faith. Tang Zheng added. Sun Jiugong nodded in a daze. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and asked, could you be a member of the god race? God race? Tang Zheng was stunned and burst into laughter. But it was no wonder Sun Jiugong misunderstood. After all, power of faith was exclusive to the god race. If one wasn't a member of the god race, it was impossible to have so much power of faith. And you're not an ordinary member of the god race. You must have an extraordinary position in the god race to have so much power of faith. Sun Jiugong muttered to himself. Then do you think I look like a member of the god race? Tang Zheng asked mischievously. Sun Jiugong looked at Tang Zheng in a daze and shook his head firmly. No, the god race is the enemy of my Earth Traveler tribe. They are arrogant and look down on the Earth Traveler tribe. They don't even bother to talk to us. They would never do something like you. Tang Zheng raised his brows and looked at Sun Jiugong from head to toe. He was very surprised. Sun Jiugong actually dared to say that the Earth Traveler tribe was the god race's enemy. Tang Zheng had been in the divine realm for so long. Other than the people in the 9 nether underworlds who dared to say something like this, he had never seen anyone else who dared to say something like this. He couldn't help but ask curiously, is there a grudge between the Earth Traveler tribe and the god race? Sun Jiugong nodded heavily. Of course, this grudge has lasted for countless years. Unfortunately, we are too weak to take revenge. Chapter 1879. Tang Zheng didn't expect the god race to have a grudge with the Earth Traveler race, but this was good news for him. What is the grudge between the god race and the Earth Traveler race? Can Patriarch Sun tell me in detail? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Sun Jiugong looked deeply at Tang Zheng and said, there's no harm in telling you. The Earth Traveler race is one of the earliest races in the god realm. When the world was created, 2 races were born in the god realm, the god race and the Earth Traveler race. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. The Earth Traveler race had such a long history, and they were a race that was born when the god realm was created. Sun Jiugong looked at Tang Zheng and by Luo's expressions, and it wasn't hard to guess what they were thinking. He smiled bitterly and said, the god race's cultivation talent is amazing, far surpassing our Earth Traveler race. Over time, the Earth Traveler race was left far behind. The god race was high and mighty, and considered themselves the masters of the god realm. Moreover, they started countless wars with us, and finally forced us to the Hongjun mountain range, a cold and barren place, wanting us to fend for ourselves. How ruthless! We're both races born in the god realm, and we're like brothers. Why would the god race do such a thing? Bai Luo said indignantly. Sun Jiugong said self-deprecatingly, the god race didn't treat us like brothers. They thought that we were born small and short, a disgrace to the god realm, so they always wanted to destroy us. In the end, they found that they couldn't, so they forced us to the Hongjun mountain range, expecting us to die in such a harsh environment. It's a pity that we, the Earth Traveler race, have struggled to survive. Amazing! Tang Zheng praised sincerely. He knew how difficult it was to achieve all this, and how much effort and sacrifice they had to put in. Immediately, he felt deep respect for the Earth Traveler race. Almost no outsiders know about this part of history, and only our Earth Traveler race knows about it. After all, the god race treated us like this, so we naturally wouldn't flatter ourselves and take the initiative to get involved with them, Sun Jiugong said bitterly. The Earth Traveler race is very noble. There's no need to get involved with the god race, because that would be lowering our status, Tang Zheng said. Sun Jiugong was stunned for a moment before he burst out laughing. Huh, Well said. We, the Earth Traveler race, are not on the same side as the Celestial race. Of course, we don't want to have anything to do with them. However, if the God race listens to you, they will definitely grind your bones to dust and scatter your soul. Tang Jung chuckled and said, If I don't say that, they'll do the same to me. That's true. After all, you have the heavenly God technique and the power of faith. Sun Jiugong said meaningfully. The enmity between the Earth Traveler race and the God race has lasted for so many years. It's time to put an end to it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Tang Jung said directly. We didn't have the strength before, but now that we have your heavenly God technique and faith power, we have to end this grudge with the gods. Sun Jiugong's eyes burned with fighting spirit. But who are you? Why do you have the heavenly God's secret art and the power of faith? I can't see through you. You aren't the God race, so how did you do all this? Sun Jiugong asked doubtfully. He racked his brains, but couldn't think of an answer. Tang Jung hesitated and said, Allow me to keep you in suspense for now. In the future, you will naturally find out. He came from the human world. If his identity was exposed, would it spread to the ears of the God race? Now that two gods had come to the human world, how much would the God race's hostility toward the human world increase? He didn't need to think to guess one thing. For the safety of the human world, he had to hide his identity. Sun Jiugong stared at Tang Jung with burning eyes, as if he was weighing the pros and cons. In the end, he nodded and said, All right, I believe you. I look forward to the day when I find out the answer. That day will come, Tang Jung said with certainty. Patriarch Sun, since the enmity between the Earth Traveler race and the God race goes back so long, you must know a lot about the God race, right? Of course. Only by knowing ourselves and our enemy can we survive. Moreover, the one who knows ourselves best is our enemy. We have been the God race's enemy for countless years and have long since seen through them. Sun Jiugong patted his chest and said matter-of-factly. Tang Jung was waiting for these words. During this period of time, he had been thinking of a way to deal with the God race. Whether it was the plan he and Hades' Lord came up with together, or him passing the heavenly God art to the Earth Traveler race, these were all part of the plan. However, these were not enough to defeat the God race. The God race's foundation was too deep. As long as they had an endless supply of power of faith, even if they failed, they would have a chance to rise again. He only had one chance to fight the God race, one chance to determine victory and defeat. Moreover, the God race would never be able to rise again. What did the God race rely on to survive? The power of faith. This was the source of their power. Only by cutting off the source of their power of faith could they defeat the God race from their foundation. Tang Jung had thought of this plan, but he hadn't put it into practice because he lacked crucial information. The appearance of the Earth Traveler race solved this problem. This was a pleasant surprise. Sun Jiugong heard something and asked curiously, Could it be that you want to know some information about the God race? Of course, Tang Jung said with a smile. I want to know which world the God race's power of faith comes from. Which world does the power of faith come from? Sun Jiugong looked at Tang Jung in astonishment and said, You actually want to know this? Is there a problem? No problem. I'm just curious. What is your goal in wanting to know this? Sun Jiugong asked. To cut off the source of the God race's power of faith. Tang Jung said calmly, but these words were like a clap of thunder. Bai Luo couldn't help but cry out in shock as she looked at Tang Jung like he was a monster. Sun Jiugong couldn't hide his shock and asked, You actually have this idea? I advise you to give up on this idea. Why? Because the Earth Traveler race's ancestor once thought of this method, but unfortunately, it didn't succeed. Sun Jiugong shook his head and said resentfully. Tang Jing's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, Great minds think alike. This means that this method is feasible. Sun Jiugong looked helplessly at Tang Jung and said, Didn't you hear clearly? The Earth Traveler race didn't succeed. Tang Jung smiled and said, I don't mean to belittle the Earth Traveler race, but I haven't tried it myself, so I definitely won't be satisfied. Sun Jiugong said, You won't turn back until you hit the southern wall. You have guts, but I still have to say that this method won't work. Tang Zheng clearly wasn't convinced. It's precisely because my ancestor once tried this method that I happen to know the answer to your question. The god race's power of faith comes from 9 worlds. Apart from the god realm, there are 8 other worlds, but each world in the god realm have spatial restrictions. Tang Zheng remembered this and said, there are actually 9 worlds. Apart from the god realm, Fengdu must be one of them. Of course, this is something everyone knows. Fengdu was snatched from the 9 underworlds by the god race. The other 7 worlds are even larger than Fengdu and contribute even more power of faith. Tang Zheng said, the world I came from is one of them. There are 6 other worlds. Where are they? Chapter 1880. Tang Zheng looked at the 6 worlds and asked, do you know what these worlds are and where they are? Sun Jiugong smiled bitterly. Of course I do. Fine, I'll tell you everything. Obviously, Sun Jiugong didn't think that Tang Zheng could do anything, but he didn't know what to do, so he could only tell him everything. Tang Zheng immediately listened attentively. These worlds are very complicated. Aside from the God Realm, there are 2 other worlds: Fengdu, Ghost Realm, Devil Realm, Monster Realm, Phoenix Realm, and Dragon Realm. Tang Zheng's eyes widened in shock. Among the worlds he knew, aside from Sky, Beyond, and 9 Underworlds, they were all worlds where the god race's power of faith came from. Most importantly, there were 2 more worlds which Tang Zheng didn't expect. Aside from that, what were the Devil Realm, Monster Realm, and Phoenix Realm? He didn't know anything. Clan Leader's son, can you tell me more about the Human Realm, Devil Realm, Demon Realm, and Phoenix Realm? Tang Zheng asked. As long as I know, I will tell you everything. Sun Jiugong began to talk nonstop. The so-called 2 worlds, one of them was the world Tang Zheng came from, and the other was similar to his world. Humans were also endless and were the absolute masters of everything. Of course, there were some differences, such as the world structure, cultivation methods, and systems, which are different from Tang Zheng's world. Tang Zheng had already guessed that there were more than one human world in the vast universe, so he wasn't surprised. He decided that the humans of the other world were enslaved by the god race and became the source of their power of faith. They were really brothers in the same boat, breathing together and sharing the same fate. Obviously, that world didn't have a genius like Tang Zheng. They didn't recognize their fate and didn't fight for it. In addition, the Devil Realm was the world of the demon god. It wasn't hard to understand their worship of the god race just by hearing the name. The Devil Realm was full of demon gods, as if it was a simulation of the god race. The Monster Realm was also a world of the monster race. There were no humans. Tang Linger was a demon, so she definitely had something in common with the demons of the Demon Realm. The Phoenix Realm was very similar to the Dragon Realm, but the Phoenix race lived in the Phoenix Realm. Like the Dragon race, they were revered as divine beasts by humans and were extremely powerful. That's all I know. I'll tell you everything. As for the specific locations of these worlds, our ancestors have explored them one by one. Sun Jiugong said as he took out an ancient map. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. He quickly took the map and unfolded it. Shua, a ray of light rose up from the map and changed unpredictably above everyone's head before finally turning into a cluster of nebulas. There were 9 bright spots in this nebula, shining brightly. Nebula diagram. Bai Luo blurted out. Sun Jiugong nodded. Yes, it is. This is the nebula map that our ancestor painstakingly drew. The 9 bright spots marked on the nebula map are the 9 corresponding worlds, which are the worlds from which the god race's faith power originates. Tang Zheng curiously looked at the nebula map. This was his first time seeing a nebula map, so he couldn't help but be curious. He stared with wide eyes and immersed himself in it, not saying a word. Sun Jiugong and Bai Luo saw him immersed in it, so they also held their breaths and quietly looked at him. Sun Jiugong had already looked at the nebula map countless times, but he didn't have any insights. Apart from the locations of the 9 worlds, there was nothing else. However, the same nebula map looked completely different in Tang Zheng's eyes. Wonderful. This is truly wonderful. How come I've never thought of using the nebula to mark the locations of the worlds? Conventional maps are no longer suitable. Only a three-dimensional map, like the nebula map, can mark the locations of the worlds. This made him subconsciously think of the heavenly chess, using the world as the chessboard, how grand it was. However, Tang Zheng now had a deeper level of understanding. My previous thoughts and knowledge were still too limited. Using the world as the chessboard can't be considered truly grand. Using the universe as the chessboard and playing the heavenly chess on this nebula, using the worlds of the stars as chess pieces, only then can the heavenly chess power be maximized. Tang Zheng suddenly laughed. He now knew why the Earth Traveler race's ancestors had failed. They didn't know about the heavenly chess and couldn't use such terrifying power, so they naturally couldn't succeed. However, Tang Zheng was different. He had the heavenly chess and was very proficient in it. As long as he had enough time to study it thoroughly and successfully play the heavenly chess, the result would be completely different. Sun Jiugong and Bai Luo were shocked to see Tang Zheng suddenly laugh. Sun Jiugong nervously asked, "Tang Zheng, what's wrong?" Tang Zheng came back to his senses and looked at Sun Jiugong with a smile. Sun Jiugong was confused by his gaze. "Is there a problem with this nebula map?" Tang Zheng shook his head with a smile. "There's no problem at all. In fact, it's very important. It's enlightened me and helped me think through many key problems." Sun Jiugong's old face turned red. He had studied the nebula map countless times, but had come up empty-handed. However, Tang Zheng was enlightened with a single glance. The difference was too great. "What key problems have you thought through?" Bai Luo didn't understand and asked curiously. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. "You'll know when I've verified it." Bai Luo nodded regretfully. Sun Jiugong came back to his senses and said, "The nebula map is a pure waste in my hands. Since you've comprehended it, I'll give it to you." A treasured sword is given to a hero. Only then will it not be covered in dust. Tang Zheng said in shock, "The nebula map is so precious." The Earth Traveler race's ancestors must have spent a lot of time and effort to successfully draw it. Sun Jiugong waved his hand and said, "You're exaggerating. The nebula map is useless in my hands and has even lost its value. If I give it to you, you'll definitely make full use of its value. That way, you won't be wasting the ancestors' efforts." Sun Jiugong's words were sincere. Tang Zheng no longer hesitated and waved his hand, taking the nebula map into his hand and rolling it up. "Patriarch Sun, don't worry. I definitely won't let the Earth Traveler race's ancestors' efforts go to waste." Tang Zheng promised firmly. Sun Jiugong nodded with a gratified smile. "What are you going to do next? Are you going to these worlds?" Sun Jiugong guessed curiously. Tang Zheng generously admitted, "Yes. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated. I'll visit these worlds one by one. Perhaps only by going deep into these worlds will I be able to think of a perfect way to completely cut off the source of the God race's power of faith." Sun Jiugong didn't think that Tang Zheng would succeed before, but at this moment, he couldn't help but be shaken. Could he really succeed? Chapter 1881. In the following days, Tang Zheng taught the Earth Traveler the unworldly divine art and spread the power of faith, benefiting the Earth Traveler race greatly. What UMO hadn't expected was that Sun Dazhuang and Bai Luo were the first to establish the divine bridge. Even the Sun Clan leader was a step behind. At the same time, Tang Zheng's prestige was unparalleled. No matter where he went, the Earth Traveler race would treat him with respect and didn't dare slight him in the slightest. Tang Zheng would often stand in a world of ice and snow, gazing at the main peak and speculating about what Yuan Ying's avatar was doing. In truth, it wasn't difficult for Tang Zheng to guess Yuan Ying's plan. He was walking the path of the upper echelons. He wanted to gather all the experts in the world and grow stronger step by step until he could contend against the God race. Tang Zheng didn't think this plan would work after some analysis. The God race's strength was unquestionable. A few more Sage Realm experts wouldn't be able to turn the tables and defeat them. Yuan Ying's avatar was wishful thinking. It was too simple. Of course, with Yuanying's avatar bearing the brunt and becoming the most eye-catching target, Tang Zheng was practically invisible and wouldn't be easily discovered by the god race. Once the Earth Traveler race's cultivation was on the right track, Tang Zheng knew it was time for him to leave. Clan leader Sun looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. He had been racking his brains to figure out Tang Zheng's identity all this time, but in the end, he discovered that everything was in vain. None of his guesses were valid. A feeling of reverence arose spontaneously in his heart. He looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated gaze and asked, "Are you going to those worlds?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "Yes." Now, in the human realm, the dragon realm, and the ghost realm all regarded Tang Zheng as a god spirit. The god race was overtaken by the god race. Sooner or later, the god race would discover this serious situation. This was much more serious than the nascent soul avatar, this uninvited guest. At that time, these three worlds would definitely attract a large army of the god race, not just one. Tang Zheng was racing against time. He had to cut off the god race's power of faith before they moved. Success. Clan leader Sun cupped his hands in greeting. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded before leaving the Hongjun mountain range alone. Bai Luo stay behind. Amidst the waving of the arms, Tang Zheng stepped on the wind and disappeared into the snow that filled the sky. Tang Zheng had studied the nebula map thoroughly. Not only did he have the coordinates of those few worlds, but he also marked the coordinates of the netherworld and heavens beyond on the nebula map. I'll make a trip to the human world first and see what's the difference between it and my world. Tang Zheng's mind flickered as he urged the space principals to open a space gate. He stared at the space gate in a daze for a moment before a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. He subconsciously widened his eyes, and one thought after another surged in his mind like a tide. His mind was in a mess as his thoughts drifted. The spatial restriction is the key to isolating the various worlds. Only by comprehending the laws of space can one pass through the various worlds. To the god race, these few worlds are completely open to them because the god race has mastered the laws of space. However, to the natives of these few worlds, they have no way to pass through to the god realm. In fact, they have no way to pass through to the other worlds. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up bit by bit as his thoughts became clearer. Because they haven't comprehended the laws of space, and because their strength is too low, they have no way to jump to the other high-level worlds. The god realm is the highest level of these few worlds. The god race can go from the god realm to the other worlds, but the other worlds have no way to go to the god realm. Unless they are like me and Yuanying's doppelganger, they can cultivate to godhood. The power of faith can pass through the spatial restriction between the various worlds without any obstruction. This is based on the existing laws of space. Once the laws of space change, the power of faith will definitely not be able to smoothly pass from the various worlds to the god realm. In addition, the new laws of space will also prevent the god realm from reaching the other worlds. This can protect these weak worlds. From now on, as long as they haven't comprehended the new laws of space, the experts of the other worlds will not interfere with these worlds. Tang Zheng's eyes became brighter and brighter like the stars. He looked at the spatial gate and laughed. God race, oh God race, you never dreamed I would come up with this idea. Tang Zheng's intuition told him that this idea was feasible. However, it was not easy to truly change the laws of space. This was a huge project that required a great ability. He could only visit these few worlds and gain a deep understanding of each world. Only then would he be able to change the laws of space. He stepped into the spatial gate in high spirits. The spatial gate closed, and a moment later, he appeared in another world. Tang Zheng stood above the 9 heavens, overlooking the vast land. There were mountains, lakes, and oceans. There were many similarities with Tang Zheng's mortal world. With a thought, he flew over the mountains, lakes, oceans, and bustling streets like a ray of light. Suddenly, he stopped and looked at a majestic mountain peak below. At the peak of this mountain, there was a magnificent temple. The incense was flourishing, and believers were gathered. This was not the main point. The main point was that there was a dense power of faith lingering on the mountain peak. It was difficult to see with the naked eye, but Tang Zheng could see it clearly. This was the power of faith of the god race. Tang Zheng transformed into an ordinary person and landed on the mountain. He looked up and saw 3 familiar words, Ordinary Balance Mountain. He was stunned. He felt as if he had traveled through time and space. Ah, my hometown has an ordinary balance mountain. This place is also an ordinary balance mountain. It's really fate. Tang Zheng walked into the temple with interest. There were no cultivators here. Instead, he saw a few martial artists. Could it be that this world only has martial artists? He shook his head and did not think too much about it. He walked into the main hall. A statue of a god sat at the top of the main hall. It was dignified without being angry. The believers were kneeling at its feet, kowtowing and praying devoutly. Tang Zheng looked at the statue quietly. He could feel the aura of the god race from it. Wisps of power of faith rose from the believers like smoke. They gathered on top of the statue and soared up, passing through the top of the temple and into the 9 heavens, disappearing without a trace. The god race has thousands of incarnations. There must be statues of the god race in those 1,000-year-old temples. If every statue is destroyed, it will be a blow to the god race. Of course, this would not be of much use. On the contrary, it would alert the enemy. Tang Zheng naturally would not do this. He stood out from the crowd of devout believers and attracted a lot of attention. Someone was already walking toward him. Tang Zheng smiled and left the main hall. The other party quickly caught up and seemed to be staring at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was surprised. The other party had sharp eyes. They only met briefly and seemed to have seen through something. Tang Zheng strolled leisurely. He left the temple and came to the back of the mountain. He stood in front of the cliff and looked into the distance. At the foot of the mountain was a city. Bang bang. Chapter 1882. Tang Zheng stood at the edge of the cliff and naturally knew that the other party had caught up. This person was in his 20s and was in the prime of his life. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. There was a bit of scholarly elegance in his heroic appearance, but there was a mysterious aura around him. Ordinary people might not be able to sense it, but it couldn't hide it from Tang Zheng. This person was also looking at Tang Zheng's back like a torch, as if he wanted to see through him. May I ask who you are? This person hesitated for a long time before finally asking. Tang Zheng slowly turned around and looked at him calmly. I'm just a passing traveler. Passing traveler? This person revealed a look of suspicion. I don't think so. You have an aura that I'm familiar with. You're very powerful, so powerful that you make everyone shrink back. Oh, Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. This person had good eyesight and actually saw that Tang Zheng was different from others. He praised, your cultivation is not weak and your eyesight is not bad. This person couldn't see through Tang Zheng, but Tang Zheng could see through him with a single glance. The cultivation system of this world was completely different. It was a different cultivation method, and every realm was completely different from Tang Zheng's world. You flatter me. I'm still young and still have a long way to go. This person didn't claim credit and instead said humbly, my name is Yu Zhiqian. May I ask for your name? Yu Zhiqian, Tang Zheng muttered. Your name is not ordinary. My name is very simple, Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng, I'll remember it. Yu Zhiqian said, as for my name, it's a long story. I saw you in the temple just now, and you didn't seem to care about the statue. Could it be that you don't believe in the gods? Yu Zhiqian asked doubtfully. I don't, Tang Zheng replied honestly. Yu Zhiqian's eyelids twitched. If you don't believe in the gods won't protect you when calamities descend. Only a devout believer will be protected by the gods. Don't you understand this principle? Tang Zheng asked with a smile. It seems like you're a very devout believer. No, Yu Zhiqian shook his head. I am not a believer, but a divine envoy. Divine envoy? It was Tang Zheng's turn to be surprised. He had never heard of this name before. Precisely, the god's emissary, the temple's guardian. Yu Zhiqian said proudly, slightly raising his head. Tang Zheng felt a chill run down his spine. The influence and style of the divine race in the two human worlds were completely different. In Tang Zheng's world, they were more lax, but in this world, there were still divine envoys. This meant that the other party was his enemy. Tang Zheng maintained his composure and said, "There should be many divine envoys in this world, right? Yes, we are all from the Shinto religion. God's messengers roam the world, spreading the glory and will of God, making all living beings believe in God and become devout believers of God." Shinto. Tang Zheng keenly noticed these three words. This group of oracles was not a simple group, but a strict organization. They even formed a Shinto sect. Immediately, Tang Zheng developed a strong interest in the Shinto sect. He went straight to the point and asked, "Where is the Shinto sect?" Yu Qian said in astonishment, "You want to go to the Shinto sect? That's not an ordinary place. Aren't you guys spreading the glory of God? If you can convince me to believe in God, then for you guys, it will definitely be a great merit." Tang Zheng said meaningfully. Yu Qian was confused. "How come I don't understand what you mean?" "But spreading the glory of God is the duty of us divine envoys. I see that you are quite fated with God, so it's not impossible." "Then what are we waiting for?" Yu Qian hesitated for a moment, then said, "All right, follow me. You have to be careful. There aren't many cultivators left in this world. Instead, there are martial artists running amok. If we were to be discovered by martial artists, it would instead cause unnecessary trouble." Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the cultivators of this world were called cultivators. As for the name of martial artists, it had not changed. This point is similar to my world. Martial artists occupy an absolute majority, while cultivators are very few. Tang Zheng thought to himself, "Aren't martial artists believers of God?" "Of course they are. It's just that our cultivation methods are different, so some people have prejudices. In the eyes of ordinary people, cultivators and martial artists are different, but in the eyes of divine envoys, the two are the same. There is no difference. You guys treat everyone equally. That's natural." Yu Qian pointed his finger forward, and a flying sword glittering with cold light appeared in front of the cliff. Yu Qian called out to Tang Zheng and said, "Quickly come up. The Shinto sect is very far. We will need to fly for 2 days to reach." "Your treasured sword is not bad. Of course, this is a king weapon," Yu Qian said with a smile, very satisfied with his magic treasure. "King weapon? It seems that the level of magic treasures in this world is different." Tang Zheng noted it down. Even if it was a king weapon, in Tang Zheng's eyes, it was too weak. "Quickly come up. We are setting off," Yu Qian urged. Tang Zheng jumped on the flying sword and said, "You lead the way." Yu Qian did not understand, but did not think too much about it and said, "Stand firm." Whoosh! The flying sword quickly flew forward, bringing with it a stream of air. The biting cold wind whistled in their ears. "Too slow, let's hurry up," Tang Zheng said. Yu Qian's face reddened. "I only have this speed." "Then let me do it." Just as Tang Zheng finished speaking, the flying sword let out a violent sound, as if it was a ray of light flying out. Yu Qian cried out in alarm, swaying for a moment, almost falling off the flying sword. "Be careful," Tang Zheng reminded. Yu Qian stared blankly at his feet. Was this still his flying sword? How could it be so fast? He turned his head to look at Tang Zheng beside him, his eyes filled with shock. Who was this person? His strength was so terrifying, it was something he had rarely seen in his life. Could it be that his strength is as high as the Tao Master's? Wong wong wong. Suddenly, the flying sword trembled violently, as if it could not bear such a fast speed and was about to fall apart. Yu Qian's little heart thumped as he shouted, "Stop! Stop quickly! My flying swan sword can't take it anymore." "It's fine. It'll be able to take it after raising its grade." "Is it that easy to raise its grade?" Yu Qian did not know whether to laugh or cry. This person said it so casually, as if raising its grade was something that could be done with a single sentence. Boom! A burst of flames soared into the sky, enveloping the flying swan sword and interrupting Yu Zhiqian's thoughts. He looked at this scene in horror. The flames that appeared out of nowhere were constantly tempering his flying swan sword, but the two of them were standing on it, not affected at all. Yu Zhiqian and the flying swan sword were telepathically connected, so he immediately felt that the flying swan sword was undergoing a qualitative change. He's refining, and he's refining while flying. Yu Zhiqian did not know what words to use to describe his feelings. This kind of divine ability was unheard of, never seen before. Chapter 1883. Immortal Artifact. Immortal Artifact. Yu Zhiqian could no longer care about his image as he shouted excitedly at his Fei Hong sword. The Fei Hong sword looked completely different from the original Fei Hong sword. It had changed from a king artifact to an immortal artifact. To Tang Zheng, this was just a small matter, but to Yu Zhiqian, it was a great favor. Thank you, senior. Yu Zhiqian was moved to tears, and the way he addressed Tang Zheng had already changed. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. We should be arriving at the Divine Path sect soon, right? Yu Zhiqian looked down and nodded repeatedly. We're almost there. Originally, there were only 2 roads, but we actually arrived in half a day. I didn't know the Fei Hong sword speed could be so fast. You and I know each other, and it can be considered fate. Naturally, I can't let you lead the way for nothing. Tang Zheng laughed. Yu Zhiqian laughed bitterly and said with shame, I was just leading the way. How could I deserve such a heavy gift? Senior, you must be an otherworldly expert. Why don't you believe in gods? Also, why are you going to the Divine Path sect? I believe in myself. As for why I'm going to the Divine Path sect, maybe I just want to take a look. Tang Zheng said unfathomably. Tang Zheng was not willing to explain in detail, so Yu Zhiqian did not pursue the matter. We're here. After a moment, Yu Zhiqian suddenly pointed to a barren land below and said, Tang Zheng wrinkled his brows. Below him was a barren land with few traces of people. How could it be where the Shinto sect was? That's not right. When Tang Zheng circulated his cultivation, his eyes lit up, and he immediately saw some clues. All of this barren land was just a smokescreen. It was just that the smokescreen was extremely brilliant, and even Tang Zheng was unable to see through it in a single glance. Thus, it was even more impossible for others to see through it. This is where the Taoist gate is located. We have to land and can't fly because a great formation has been set up. Once we enter the formation, we'll be attacked by it. It's very dangerous. Yu Zhiqian introduced. Clearly, he was very wary of the great formation. It's fine, Tang Zheng replied indifferently. The flying swan's sword shone brightly, and its speed increased sharply. With a sharp sound, it pierced through the air and dived straight down. Yu Zhiqian cried out in panic, you can't. Boom! The Fei Hong sword passed through an invisible barrier, and the scene in front of him changed abruptly. It was a scene of green mountains and clear waters, a scene of paradise. Numerous mountain peaks pierced through the clouds, and the mountain peak in the middle was precipitous. It towered into the clouds like a treasured sword, piercing through the heavens. Tang Zheng nodded approvingly. The Shinto sect indeed has some foundation to actually have such a paradise. Yu Zhiqian's face was deathly pale as he muttered incessantly, Oh no, we're in big trouble now. Whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, streaks of sword light shot up from the various mountain peaks and attacked Tang Zheng at the same time. Yu Zhiqian yelled, The formation has been activated. Hide! Tang Zheng, however, didn't dodge. He directly controlled the flying swan sword and flew toward the highest mountain peak like a hot knife through butter. Thousands of flying swords attacked. Yu Zhiqian was dumbfounded and closed his eyes in despair. It was as if he would experience the feeling of thousands of swords piercing his heart in the next second. But after waiting for a while, there was still no movement. He hurriedly opened his eyes and found that all the swords had stopped beside Tang Zheng. The flying swan sword continued forward, and the flying swords actually flew with it, as if they were also under Tang Zheng's control. Thousands of swords shot out in unison and flew toward the highest mountain peak. as if they wanted to pierce it full of holes. Yu Jiqian's palms were drenched in cold sweat as he said with trepidation, "Senior, something big will happen." Tang Zheng said calmly, "No matter, I also want to see the Shinto sex abilities." As they spoke, they had already flown to the mountain peak. Furious roars rang out from the other mountain peaks like thunder. Then, numerous figures shot over like lightning, as if to stop Tang Zheng. But they were too late. Thousands of swords shot out in unison and surged toward a divine temple at the peak of the mountain. Buzz! A sword cry rang out from the divine temple as a dagger-like, small sword flew out from the temple to meet the thousands of flying swords. Ding, ding, ding. The flying swords struck the small sword. The small sword was unscathed, but the flying swords disappeared without a trace. The small sword had completely disappeared, and the small sword had also become a bit bigger. In a flash, thousands of flying swords merged into the small sword, and the small sword also underwent a tremendous change. It could no longer be called a small sword, but a giant sword. The giant sword stood in the air above the divine temple and aimed at Tang Zheng, whistling through the air. The flying swan sword trembled violently, as if it knew that it was no match for this giant sword and was instinctively afraid. Hidden Profound Sword. Tang Zheng called out softly. The hidden profound sword flew up, the sacred patterns on the sword emitting a mysterious luster, adding to the hidden profound sword's mysteriousness. Yu Jiqian was instantly attracted by the hidden profound sword. Compared to it, the flying swan sword was too shabby. There's actually such a treasured sword in the world. Which is more powerful, this or the path sword? Yu Jiqian muttered to himself. So this giant sword is called the path sword. Tang Zheng saw the sacred patterns on the path sword. Without a doubt, this was also a sacred weapon. There were 3 sacred patterns on the sword, one more than the hidden profound sword. Whoosh! The path sword tore through the air, and the hidden profound sword was placed in front of Tang Zheng and Yu Jiqian. It had the aura of a sword that could block all swords. Boom! The 2 swords collided. The hidden profound sword was as steady as Mount Tai. The path sword collapsed and turned back into flying swords, while the small sword was in the center. With just one strike, the path sword was at a disadvantage. Yu Jiqian's eyes widened in horror. Although he had already guessed that the hidden profound sword was extraordinary, he did not expect it to be so powerful. With just one move, it had suppressed the path sword. The path sword did not admit defeat. The 10,000 swords gathered and turned back into a giant sword. However, the transformation continued. With a flash of light, the path sword turned into a round ball and spun. Sword pellet. Yu Jiqian shouted. Tang Zheng admired it curiously and said, "Sword pellet. Interesting." After the path sword turned into a sword pellet, its power seemed to have changed. This meant that the sword pellet's attack power was above this. This has provided me with a new train of thought. I'll have to think about it later. The sword pellet is indeed worth studying. Tang Zheng nodded secretly. He was very interested in this transformation. Tang Zheng stared at the path sword pellet and said casually, "This is still not my hidden profound sword's match." Break! Boom! The hidden profound sword hit the sword pellet. The sword pellet was slippery. The hidden profound sword slid and could not do anything to the sword pellet. Tang Zheng stared in astonishment. Interesting. He did not mind. The hidden profound sword shone brightly and enveloped the sword pellet. The outside could not see the situation clearly. Boom! With another shocking explosion, the sword light dissipated and the sword pellet disappeared. The small sword appeared again, but the 10,000 flying swords around it had cracks. It was a tragic sight. Roar! Chapter 1884. A person flew out of the temple and into the clouds. He stood in front of Tang Zheng and Yu Jiqian, looking at them with a red face. Yu Jiqian, it's you. The other party recognized Yu Jiqian and was furious. Yu Jiqian had long since been stunned by the earth-shattering battle just now. Only now did he come back to his senses and explained, "Dao Master, it's not what you think." Tang Zheng looked at him with a smile and said, "You're the Tao Master of the Divine Tao sect." The Tao Master sized up Tang Zheng from head to toe, his eyelids twitching. "Yes, who are you? How dare you behave so atrociously in my Divine Tao sect?" "No, I heard that the Divine Tao sect spread the will of God, so I came here to listen to what this so-called will of God is." The Tao Master's brows jumped. "You don't believe in God?" Tang Zheng nodded. "I believe in myself. You're actually a person without faith. Do you know how serious this is? Without faith, you're just duckweed without roots. You won't be able to go far on the path of cultivation." The Tao Master's words flowed like a river. Tang Zheng listened quietly and praised. "Your eloquence is indeed excellent. No wonder you can spread God's will and become the Tao Master of the Divine Tao sect. However, it's not that I don't believe in God. I believe in myself." The Tao Master snorted and laughed. "You believe in yourself? Ha! You really dare to say that? Who are you? Can you be compared to God?" "Why not?" Tang Zheng asked back, causing the Tao Master's eyes to widen. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Divine envoys flew over from the other peaks and surrounded Tang Zheng so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. After hearing his rebellious words, all of them looked at him as if he were a monster. Yu Zhiqian complained incessantly. He originally wanted the Tao Master to spread God's will to Tang Zheng and turn him into a believer. Who would have thought that Tang Zheng's attack would be so ruthless that it would almost destroy the Tao sword? Furthermore, he would even spout nonsense in front of the Tao Master. However, he was the one who brought him back, so he had to be responsible for Tang Zheng. Seeing that both sides were at loggerheads, he hurriedly interrupted and said, "Tao Master, don't misunderstand. Tang Zheng isn't a bad person. He's just very confused. As long as we spread God's will to him, he'll definitely sincerely believe in God." The Tao Master looked at Yu Zhiqian with an unkind expression. Yu Zhiqian's heart skipped a beat as an enormous pressure pressed down on him, causing him to be unable to breathe. Tang Zheng pointed his finger, and the pressure on Yu Zhiqian's body disappeared. He defended. "He's a divine envoy of the Shinto sect, so why do you have to make things difficult for him? What's more, his original intention was not bad. He did it for your Shinto sect." The Taoist master snorted and said, "I don't need you to tell me what to do when I teach my own people a lesson. I just don't want him to get hurt." Yu Zhiqian glanced gratefully at Tang Zheng. The Tao Master clearly did not listen to Tang Zheng as he glared at Yu Zhiqian with an unkind gaze. He stared at Tang Zheng like a tiger eyeing its prey and said, "You have no God in your heart and are not on the same path as us. Our Shinto sect does not welcome you." The Tao Master was a smart person. Tang Zheng was so powerful that he had no way to make him believe in God, so he directly ordered him to leave. Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to him and gazed at the majestic mountain peak in front of him. There was a large amount of power of faith circling above the temple. This was the power of faith belonging to the divine race. This Shinto sect was the place where the will of the divine race was spread, so the amount of power of faith gathered here was also the greatest. The power of faith began to stir and soared into the 9 heavens bit by bit before disappearing without a trace. There was simply too much power of faith, and it seemed to be endless. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, the Tao Master followed the latter's gaze. His pupils constricted as he wondered if Tang Zheng had seen through some clues. The power of faith couldn't be seen with the naked eye, because the Tao Master was protected by the divine race. He could see the power of faith and naturally knew that the power of faith soared into the 9 heavens above the temple. "What are you looking at?" the Tao Master asked cautiously. Tang Zheng said with a smile, "This place has so much power of faith. You guys are indeed worthy of being divine envoys. You are the most devout believers of the divine race, and the power of faith produced here is much more than the other temples." "What?" The Tao Master turned pale with fright and screamed. Tang Zheng directly exposed everything, which greatly exceeded the Tao Master's expectations. "How do you know about the power of faith?" the Tao Master asked in a deep voice, his expression becoming fierce. The others were confused and looked at Tang Zheng and the Tao Master in confusion. Obviously, it didn't know about the existence of the power of faith. When Tang Zheng saw this, he understood and said, "I understand." Haha, to you divine envoys, you only know how it is and don't know why it is. Yu Qian asked curiously, "What do you mean?" The Tao Master flew into a rage. Yu Qian, why are you asking him? This person is obviously someone with bad intentions, spouting nonsense here to disturb people's hearts. The entire Divine Path sect must not listen to his nonsense. Everyone nodded, believing the Tao Master's words without a doubt. Yu Qian was young and full of curiosity. He couldn't help but say, "Tao Master, I think it's better to let him speak clearly. The more he argues, the clearer it becomes." The divine race is never afraid of being questioned. The Tao Master said guiltily, "What are you arguing about? Are you confused? You brought him back. Are you really jackals of the same lair?" Yu Qian flatly denied, saying with grievance, "I'm just trying to find out the truth." Tang Zheng praised with a smile. The child is worth teaching, not blindly following the words of authority and others. Divine envoys, you have wholeheartedly spread the divine race's will, but now it seems that you're all kept in the dark and don't even know the most fundamental problem. In the entire Divine Path sect, only the Tao Master knows, but he deliberately didn't tell you. His intentions are clear as day. The Tao Master flew into a rage. "You dare slander me in public. You're angry because of a guilty conscience. You know very well whether your words are true or false. Since you're hiding it from everyone, then I'll reveal the truth for everyone." "Shut up." The Tao Master gripped his sword as if he was about to attack. Tang Zheng glanced at him playfully. "Are you sure you want to attack?" The Tao Master hesitated. He had already experienced Tang Zheng's strength and knew that he was no match for him. If he acted rashly, he would only be asking for humiliation. Tang Zheng saw through the Tao Master's thoughts and said, "The divine race you believe in is actually a divine race that lives in the divine realm, but they are not omnipotent. Believing in them may not bring you any practical benefits, but you have brought practical benefits to the gods, and they have benefited greatly." Believers brought practical benefits to the divine race. This completely overturned their understanding. They used to think that the divine race had blessed them and brought them benefits, but now it was reversed. They had benefited the divine race greatly. "How can this be?" Yu Qian asked blankly. "It's the truth." Tang Zheng said firmly, "You believe in God, and then you will produce the power of faith. What the God clan needs is the power of faith. This is their source of power. They need the power of faith to cultivate and raise their realm." Chapter 1885. The crowd was in an uproar as they began to discuss amongst themselves. Seeing this, the Tao Master quickly retorted, "Don't listen to this person's nonsense. Who does he think he is, daring to defile the gods?" However, the Tao Master's words did not have much effect. Everyone's eyes were filled with doubt. Tang Zheng struck while the iron was hot. "As divine envoys, don't you have the ability to distinguish whether my words are true or false? He is misleading the masses with his lies. If you believe him, the gods will punish you. You should consider it carefully." The Tao Master was helpless as he threatened. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. The Tao Master was at his wit's end. "The gods you don't believe in will not protect you. You are spreading the will of the gods for them. This is harming the world. You are all devout and kind people. Are you sure you want to continue doing this?" Tang Zheng continued to speak, causing some people to waver. Yu Qian said in confusion, "You are a human. How can you be so clear about the matters of the gods?" "I am a human, but I have already cultivated to the realm of the gods." Tang Zheng's words were earth-shattering. When the divine envoys heard this, they were so shocked that they could not speak. "The realm of the gods. Ha ha ha." The Tao Master laughed wildly and mocked. Everyone listened to him. He actually said that he has cultivated to the realm of the gods. What a joke. Do you still think that what he said is true? He has been spouting nonsense all this time, actually comparing himself to the gods. The gods are aloof and remote. How could they be within reach of you? The Tao Master's words were effective. Many of the divine envoys revealed looks of doubt. In their knowledge, the gods were a height that humans could not reach. For Tang Zheng to suddenly say that he had cultivated to the realm of the gods was simply too unbelievable. Yu Qian asked in a daze, "Can a human really cultivate to the realm of the gods?" He did not doubt Tang Zheng and instead looked forward to it. The Tao Master flew into a rage. "Yu Qian, do you know how disgraceful your words are? You actually dare to listen to his crazy words? Have you also gone crazy?" Yu Qian looked left and right with a blank expression, as though he couldn't make up his mind. Tang Zheng smiled and said, "I'm not crazy, and neither are you. Gods can indeed cultivate to the level of gods, but those gods are always high and mighty. We can surpass them, and no longer be enslaved by them. Crazy, really crazy. Tang Zheng, I don't care where you're from. You're treacherous and have touched my Shinto's bottom line. Originally, I didn't want to lower myself to your level, but you brought this upon yourself. Divine envoys, listen up. This man is spreading lies to deceive the masses and tarnishing the spirits of the gods. Everyone, work together to kill him." The Tao Master's killing intent surged as he gave the order, his voice loud and clear. The Taoist master was the leader of Shinto, and no one could surpass his control over the divine envoys. Although Tang Zheng's words had shaken the hearts of many divine envoys, after all, there were more divine envoys who obeyed the Taoist master's orders. As a result, the sounds of battle rang out from all directions as the tide of people surged forward. The divine envoys charged forward with all kinds of magical treasures, their killing intent overflowing into the heavens as they surrounded Tang Zheng. Yu Qian was shocked and hurriedly advised, "You should leave quickly, or your life will be in danger." Tang Zheng looked at him in surprise and said with a smile, "You're smarter than them and have your own judgment." Yu Qian stomped his feet anxiously and urged, "Don't say any more. Run for your life. Don't you trust me? Since you trust me, why should I run?" Tang Zheng retorted. Yu Qian was stunned. Yes, since he trusted him, then he had reached the level of a god. No matter how many divine envoys there were, how could they threaten him? But Yu Qian stammered, not knowing how to answer. "You trust me, so of course I have to live up to your trust. Watch carefully." Tang Zheng slowly turned around. Facing the attacks coming from all directions, he was calm and collected, as if these attacks were insignificant. Looking at his back, Yu Qian had a feeling that he was no longer a human, but the god he had always believed in. Seeing that Tang Zheng didn't run away, the Tao Master couldn't help but smile in relief. To be honest, Tang Zheng had defeated him, but he didn't think that Tang Zheng had reached the level of a god. In his knowledge, there was no way a human could do this. Thus, Tang Zheng definitely wouldn't be able to gain any benefits from his group's attack. As for the negative impact of this matter, it would be eliminated bit by bit later. Tang Zheng stretched out his finger and pointed at the sky. His movements were very slow, causing everyone to be confused. What was the use of this? Could it be that he could block everyone's attacks just by pointing at the sky? This was something that humans couldn't do at all. The treasure was the first to attack Tang Zheng, its murderous intent overflowing. Suddenly, space froze, and the treasure seemed to have lost its power, completely floating in front of Tang Zheng. The divine envoys simultaneously lost their connection with the treasure, and their expressions changed greatly. However, they didn't have time to react. They also found that they couldn't move, and they were reduced to the same result as the treasure. What's going on? One by one, they widened their eyes in horror and tried their best to activate their skills, but they were powerless. This was a power that couldn't be resisted, like the difference between an ant and a tree. The Tao Master was waiting for Tang Zheng to be cut into pieces, but he found that he couldn't move at all, completely frozen in mid-air. On the mountain peak, everything was still. There was no wind or grass, and it was dead silent. The Tao Master was shocked and realized that something was wrong. He retreated in panic, hoping to get as far away from Tang Zheng as possible. He had just taken a step back when he found that he couldn't move. He was like a puppet, unable to control his body. Even the Dao sword was frozen in front of him, losing its luster. There were only two people left in the world who could still move: Tang Zheng and Yu Zhiqian. Yu Zhiqian was really stunned and at a loss. All of this seemed like a dream. He moved his neck and found that he could still move, and he felt a sense of relief that he had survived a disaster. "Do you believe me now?" Tang Zheng turned around and looked at Yu Zhiqian with a smile. Yu Zhiqian opened his mouth wide and nodded blankly. He asked, "Is this the realm of gods?" "Yes." Tang Zheng nodded. He looked around, and his gaze swept past everyone. They seemed to have been swept by a sharp light, and there was nowhere to hide. It was as if all their secrets were presented in front of Tang Zheng. "This is the realm of gods. I'm a human, but I've reached the realm of gods. What I can do, you can do too. Humans should be in charge of their own destiny, and not hand everything over to gods. This is the act of a coward." Tang Zheng's words were deafening, deeply stimulating the weak nerves of the divine envoys. Tang Zheng pointed at the Tao Master and said, "Tao Master, you know very well in your heart. Am I wrong?" The Tao Master found that he could speak again. He took a deep breath and said, "The gods will punish you. You will receive divine punishment." Tang Zheng didn't mind and laughed. "Divine punishment? I really want to see it." Chapter 1886. The expressions of the messengers changed as the Tao Master cried out for divine punishment. Yu Zhiqian's mouth twitched as he said worriedly, "Tang Zheng, leave quickly." Tang Zheng looked at him in astonishment and asked, "Why?" "Divine punishment isn't a joke." Yu Zhiqian hesitated for a moment before reminding him out of goodwill. "Didn't I tell you that I'm already a god? What's there to fear about a mere divine punishment?" Tang Zheng casually said. Looking around, taking in everyone's reaction, he said with interest, "Since you are all so afraid of God's punishment, then I would like to see what this so-called God's punishment is." Everyone looked at him in horror. Some were taking pleasure in his misfortune, while others were curious. Conflicted, Yu Zhiqian pushed Tang Zheng and urged, "You really should leave quickly. You won't be able to leave if you're any later." Tang Zheng said with a spurious smile, "Don't be in such a hurry. The show hasn't started yet. How can I leave?" Yu Zhiqian's expression froze. Knowing that he couldn't persuade Tang Zheng, he let out a long sigh. The Tao Master was inexplicably excited as he clamored, "Since you don't know life from death, I'll fulfill your wish and let you experience what divine punishment is. I'll let a swindler like you scatter your soul and vanish into thin air." The Tao Master put his palms together and knelt on the ground with a plop, kowtowing toward the sky while muttering an incantation. Tang Zheng said in surprise, "What's going on?" "He's even kneeling down." Yu Zhiqian sighed and shook his head. "He's asking for divine punishment." Tang Zheng came to a sudden realization. "Oh, so divine punishment can be invited. Is he asking for divine punishment?" "Yes." The Tao Master is the head of the divine Tao sect and is connected to the gods. "He can invite divine punishment," Yu Zhiqian said in a deep voice. Apparently, the messengers of the divine Tao sect were very respectful toward divine punishment. Tang Zheng urged calmly, "Tao Master, don't be anxious. Take your time to invite divine punishment. I'm not in a hurry." The Tao Master shook violently. He was clearly more anxious than Tang Zheng, and the incantation in his mouth was even faster. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of thunder resounded in the sky. A black cloud appeared in the sky at an unknown time, as if it had appeared out of thin air. The divine punishment is about to descend. The divine messenger's expression changed greatly. He shouted and retreated. He tried his best to distance himself from Tang Zheng, afraid that he would be implicated. Yu Zhiqian didn't leave. Tang Zheng glanced at him and asked, "Why don't you stay away from me?" Yu Zhiqian shook his head with a bitter smile. "I was the one who brought you here, so it's equivalent to me leading you into danger. How can I stay out of this?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You're magnanimous and righteous, much more interesting than Taoist master." Yu Zhiqian sighed inwardly. It's already a matter of life and death, yet you're still in the mood to joke around. Your mentality is too good. Rumble. The sound of thunder grew louder and louder. A bolt of lightning danced in the clouds like an electric serpent rolling in the clouds with a great momentum. Tang Zheng looked up and said in astonishment, "Purple lightning, is this the so-called divine punishment? Divine thunder of the 9 heavens?" Yu Zhiqian's expression became extremely pale as he said with a trembling voice. Tang Zheng came to a sudden realization and nodded seriously. "So this is called the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. This is the so-called divine punishment." Yu Zhiqian nodded resentfully. "Yes, when a human cultivates to the peak, they will attract a divine tribulation. This is a test from the gods, but the divine punishment is even more powerful than the divine tribulation. This is an existence that no human can contend against." Tang Zheng fell into deep thought. He knew that the human cultivation system of this world was completely different. It turned out that cultivating to the peak would attract a divine tribulation. This difference was especially obvious. The Tao Master's expression became extremely gloomy as he listened to the two's conversation. This was especially true when Tang Zheng didn't put the divine punishment in his eyes. This caused him to burn with anger. "If you think the divine punishment is only so, then I'll let you know how powerful it is." The Tao Master stopped chanting and shouted loudly, "Divine punishment, divine thunder of the 9 heavens." Boom! The sound of thunder drowned out the Tao Master's voice as a bolt of purple lightning fell from the sky. The lightning fell in extremely fast speed, but its speed was even faster. In a flash, the lightning covered the mountain peak as if it wanted to destroy it. The Tao Master's eyes flickered as he pointed at Tang Zheng. The divine thunder of the 9 heavens was guided and flew towards Tang Zheng and Yu Zhiqian. Yu Zhiqian's face was ashen as his eyes widened. In front of the divine thunder of the 9 heavens, he gave up resisting because all resistance was futile. "I'm really going to die this time." His eardrums vibrated as if they wanted to pierce through his brain. His eyes were stinging as the purple lightning flashed and blinded him. However, he did his best to open his eyes. Even if he was going to die, he had to face it head-on. Tang Zheng glanced at Yu Zhiqian and raised the hidden profound sword. He stepped into the air and walked towards the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Under the divine thunder of the 9 heavens, he seemed extremely small and weak, like an ant trying to shake a tree. Many people sighed. This kind of outstanding talent had died, just like that. It was really a pity. He could only blame himself for underestimating the strength of the Shinto sect. The true killing weapon of the Shinto sect was the divine punishment. In the world, only the Tao Master could invite the divine punishment. This was also the source of his prestige. The Tao Master's eyes were full of splendor. There was no doubt that Tang Zheng made him feel fear. However, after inviting the divine punishment, his confidence had increased greatly and his fear had disappeared. On the contrary, because of this matter, his prestige had increased again. In the world, no one would dare to challenge his prestige. "Die, quickly die." "Ha, I really don't know where a lunatic like you came from. You actually said that you've cultivated to become a god. Do you think I'll be fooled by you? You can fool others, but you definitely can't fool me." The Tao Master was proud, and his eyes were full of anticipation. He looked at the thin figure walking towards the divine thunder of the 9 heavens as if he was looking at a dead man. Suddenly, a sword light bloomed from Tang Zheng's hand. The hidden profound sword's power was unleashed to the extreme. The sacred pattern lit up, and the extremely simple sacred pattern contained a mysterious power. The sacred pattern and the sword light merged into one and pierced through the world. Boom! The lightning and the divine thunder of the 9 heavens met. The net of lightning in the sky was split into 2. Countless lightning surrounded the hidden, profound sword and crackled, continuously attacking the sword. The sacred pattern trembled violently as if it was going to collapse at any time. Tang Jing's eyes brightened. He felt the power of the divine thunder of the 9 heavens from the hidden, profound sword. It was indeed extraordinary. No mortal would be able to survive under the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. The relationship between the Shinto sect and the divine race is very deep. Otherwise, it would not be able to invite the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. This is no longer the power of a human, but the power of the divine race. Moreover, this is not a power that ordinary divine race can use. The divine thunder of the 9 heavens is rare. I can't waste it. This is the best way to refine a magic treasure. Tang Zheng looked at the continuously flashing purple lightning on the hidden profound sword and had a flash of inspiration as he came up with an excellent idea. The hidden profound sword was a divine weapon with sacred patterns. However, it was far from the limit of a magic treasure. There is still room for improvement. Chapter 1887. The 9 heavens' divine thunder was invincible, and the purple lightning continued to temper the hidden sword. Tang Zheng was in the middle of the electric net, but the hidden sword attracted most of the 9 heavens' divine thunder, and the rest was not enough to hurt Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng stared at the hidden sword and saw the 2 extremely simple divine runes flickering under the tempering of the 9 heavens' divine thunder. Gradually, changes began to appear. The 2 divine runes moved closer to each other and finally merged into one, becoming a single divine rune. The hidden sword finally made a breakthrough and leveled up. The hidden sword with 1 divine rune was much more powerful than the one with 2 divine runes, which was a qualitative leap. Tang Zheng was overjoyed, and he stared at the hidden sword with burning eyes and shouted, "Hidden sword, break!" The divine rune suddenly lit up like a star. Swoosh! The divine rune flew from the hidden sword and turned into a ray of sword light that pierced through the sky, and with a whoosh, it slashed at the 9 heavens' divine thunder. Rumble! The 9 heavens' divine thunder seemed to feel threatened, and thunder rumbled. However, in the next second, the sword light pierced through the 9 heavens' divine thunder, splitting the black cloud into 2. As for the 9 heavens' divine thunder in the sky, it disappeared as if it had never been there. The sword light did not diminish, and with a puff, it went straight through the Way Master's body. The power of the sword light was too strong. The Taoist master only had time to let out a scream. In the next moment, he was turned into dust and disappeared completely from the world. The world fell silent, and there was no sound. All the oracles were like stone men, and they stared blankly at the scene, and their minds had stopped thinking. That was the 9 heavens' divine thunder, which was enough to destroy any existence. However, in front of this person, the 9 heavens' divine thunder was defeated, and even the Way Master's soul was destroyed. This was beyond their knowledge, and they were at a loss. Tang Zheng withdrew his gaze from the distance and gently stroked the hidden sword with his finger. The hidden sword vibrated excitedly, and a divine rune flickered, which was very eye-catching. The divine thunder of the 9 heavens is indeed extraordinary. I really want to thank you. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. Without a doubt, the 9 heavens' divine thunder was a technique of the Shun clan. Now that he had the hidden sword with a saintly pattern, he was no longer afraid of the 9 heavens' divine thunder. As if waking up from a dream, Yu Zhiqian turned his head with difficulty and looked at Tang Zheng in a daze. His throat moved, but he couldn't say a single word. Tang Zheng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "How do you feel?" Yu Zhiqian's emotions were complicated. He was both shocked and relieved. In short, there were no words that could describe his current feelings. "It'll be fine once you get used to it." Tang Zheng was not surprised and encouraged him. Yu Zhiqian nodded with a bitter smile. Adapt? How could he adapt? Not to mention Yu Zhiqian's mixed feelings, the other divine envoys regained their senses. Their hearts were filled with anxiety and uneasiness. When they saw Tang Zheng looking at them, they lowered their heads, not knowing what fate awaited them. After all, in front of Tang Zheng all the divine envoys added together would not be able to withstand a single blow. Do you all want to live? Tang Zheng slowly opened his mouth and asked the question that all the divine envoys were most concerned about. Yes, all the divine envoys nodded at the same time. The so-called loyal subjects of the Shun clan were unable to withstand a single blow and were thrown beyond the 9 heavens. As long as you all want to live, then that's fine. From now on, he will be your Tao master. As long as you respect him as your master, then you can live. Tang Zheng pointed at Yu Zhiqian and said, "What?" Yu Zhiqian suddenly raised his head. He was caught off guard as he stared blankly at Tang Zheng and blurted out, "Absolutely not. What right do I have to be a Tao master?" Tang Zheng said indifferently, "If I say you can, then you can. Does anyone object?" The divine envoys suppressed their fluctuating emotions and advised righteously, "Zhiqian, we already knew that you were not a fish in a pond and that you would transform into a dragon upon encountering a storm. Today, our judgment has been confirmed. If you don't become a Tao master, then who else can? Yes, you are our Tao master. Greetings, Tao master." One by one, the divine envoys knelt down towards Yu Zhiqian and shouted in unison. Yu Zhiqian felt as if he was dreaming as he looked at the kneeling divine envoys and then at the smiling Tang Zheng. He was at a loss as to what to do. Tang Zheng laughed loudly as he patted Yu Zhiqian's shoulder and said encouragingly, "I believe that in your hands, the Shinto sect will truly flourish and reach a new height." Yu Zhiqian sighed as he understood that he could no longer refuse. Since things had already reached this point, then there was no harm in thinking on the bright side. After all, he had never had such a young Tao master before. Moreover, he had Tang Zheng's help. As long as he planned carefully, it was not impossible for him to achieve great things. He believed that Tang Zheng had his own reasons for doing this, and that he only needed to wait patiently for what would happen next. "Tao master, take me on a tour of the Shinto sect," Tang Zheng said with a smile. Yu Zhiqian nodded and led the way. "Please follow me." As he walked forward, he introduced, "The Shinto sect has a total of 9 peaks, 8 of which surround and protect the main peak. The main peak is where the Tao master resides, while the other divine envoys live on the 8 peaks. Each peak is managed by a mountain lord who listens to the Tao master." Tang Zheng nodded inwardly as he looked around. Indeed, there were 8 peaks surrounding and protecting the main peak. As for the 8 mountain lords, it was unknown how many of them were still alive. But this was not important. Let's go to the main peak first. Yu Zhiqian led Tang Zheng to the top of the main peak. On top of the main peak stood a temple, which Tang Zheng had already seen before. "What's in the temple?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. "The temple enshrines a heavenly deity." "Heavenly deity?" Tang Zheng said that it must be a certain divine race. Thus, he strode into the temple. As soon as he entered, the aura around him was completely different. There was too much power of faith. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. The power of faith in the temple was extremely dense. It was like air everywhere, far more than the power of faith above the temple. Tang Zheng walked through the power of faith and asked, "Did you know that there is so much power of faith in the temple? Today is the first time I've heard of power of faith." Yu Zhiqian said bitterly. Tang Zheng nodded with a smile. "The previous Tao master hid too much from you. Does this power of faith really have such a great effect?" Yu Zhiqian asked curiously. "Of course, it is extremely important to the divine race. It is the source of their power. Unfortunately, not only did they enslave you, they also deceived you." Tang Zheng shook his head and sighed. "Then, is this power of faith useful to you?" Yu Zhiqian asked cautiously. Tang Zheng laughed. "Of course it's useful. Look carefully." Tang Zheng's finger pointed at the void. With a whoosh, a huge vortex appeared in front of him. The power of faith revolved around the vortex and gathered from all directions. The source of the vortex was Tang Zheng's body. The power of faith continuously entered Tang Zheng's body. Yu Zhiqian stared blankly at this scene and muttered to himself, "This is power of faith." Roar! Chapter 1888. A furious roar came from the main hall of the Divine Temple. The sound was terrifying, but it was only confined to the Divine Temple. Those outside the Divine Temple could not hear this roar at all. Yu Zhitian's expression changed abruptly as he cried out in surprise, "What is this?" He had been in the Divine Tao sect for many years and never knew that there was actually such a terrifying existence in the main hall. He had only entered the main hall and sincerely kowtowed to the statue before, so he did not discover any other abnormalities. Tang Zheng said with a grin, "Follow me in." Yu Zhiqian warned carefully, "Be careful." "No worries." Tang Zheng was full of confidence, seemingly not placing this threat in his eyes. Tang Zheng walked into the main hall leisurely. Whoosh whoosh. A gale rose up from the ground without any warning, blowing Yu Zhiqian until he subconsciously narrowed his eyes into slits. Tang Zheng was used to it and said, "You want to stop me with a mere gale? Ha ha. Divine race, do you only have this little bit of means?" Divine race? Yu Zhitian's face was ashen. Although he had joined the Divine Tao sect for many years and kowtowed to the divine race every day, he had never seen one with his own eyes. It turned out that there was a true divine race hidden in the main hall of the Divine Temple. How is this possible? Seeing it with his own eyes, there was already nothing impossible. It could only mean that the original Tao Master had hidden many things from them. Tang Zheng walked straight into the gale, and Yu Zhitian hurriedly followed. This gale could not harm Tang Zheng, but it was not a small threat to Yu Zhitian. Of course, he did not dare to take the risk. The gale directly parted a path, as though there was a terrifyingly powerful force forcibly tearing it apart into two. The two walked against the wind and finally entered the main hall. A statue stood tall above the main hall, glaring angrily and incomparably dignified. Yu Zhiqian raised his head and looked at the statue in surprise, saying, "How did this statue change?" Its face was very calm before, but this time it's actually a bit sinister and terrifying. Tang Zheng understood as he stared at the statue and said, "Just now, it was you who was shouting and yelling, right?" The statue suddenly opened its eyes, and the light in its eyes shot out in all directions. It was breathtaking, but it had no effect on Tang Zheng. "Who are you? You dared to kill the Tao Master of my Shinto sect and destroy my Shinto sect." Obviously, the statue had also seen everything, but he did not appear to rescue them. This already explained many things. Tang Zheng asked jokingly, "I've already killed and destroyed them. What can you do about it?" "You are going against God." The statue roared hysterically. "God?" Tang Zheng chuckled. "Then what do you think I am?" Boom! A surge of energy spread out from Tang Zheng's body, filling the hall. Immediately, the raging astral winds were torn to pieces, dissipating in a short while. This energy was like a mountain directly pressing down on the statue of the deity. Creak! Creak! Suddenly, the statue made a strange noise as if it was about to shatter. Yu Zhitian was immediately stunned. It turned out that Tang Zheng had been preserving his strength all this time. Even when facing the nine heavens' divine thunder, he did not use his full strength. At this time, the power that burst out made Yu Zhiqian not have the slightest thought of resisting. He knew that as long as Tang Zheng displayed this power in front of the Shinto sect's divine emissary, those remaining wishful thinking in their hearts would disappear. The statue's eyes were filled with shock as it looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief. It stretched out its trembling arm and pointed at Tang Zheng. You are also of the god race." The power Tang Zheng displayed was no longer the power of a human, but the power of the god race. The statue could not be more familiar and recognized at a glance. "I'm not of the god race. I am a human," Tang Zheng retorted. "A human, cultivating to become a god. How is this possible?" The statue had a shocked expression, as if it did not dare to believe it, even if it was beaten to death. "The truth is in front of you. Can you still deny it? You god race guarded to the death, but did you know that a human would succeed one day? This day has come." Tang Zheng's aura was like a rainbow, pressuring the statue until it gasped for breath. Nonsense. A god is a god. A human can never truly become a god. If you dare to go against the heavens, you will be consigned to eternal damnation and die without a burial place. The statue roared fiercely, as if it was cheering for itself. Noisy. Tang Zheng rubbed his ears and shook his head. Since you are so stubborn, then you can accompany your god race and die without a burial place. Tang Zheng's figure flashed and attacked the statue, his huge fist going straight for the statue's chest. The statue lost its head out of fear, shouting loudly as it reacted in a panic. Bang! However, it was still unable to escape. Tang Zheng's fist landed on the statue's chest, causing stone fragments to swirl in the air. There were still traces of blood on it. The statue was suddenly startled and lowered its head to look at the large hole in its chest. It stammered, "You actually dare to injure me. You can really injure me." Tang Zheng casually said, "How can you be so stubborn and not believe my words? I am a god." The statue hysterically roared. Stubborn and unrepentant. Tang Zheng speechlessly shook his head. With a flash of light, the hidden profound sword appeared in his hand. When the statue saw the hidden profound sword, despair and deep fear appeared in its eyes. Shwa! The sword flashed. Whoosh! The statue did not meet the hidden profound sword head-on. Instead, it was incomparably nimble. Like a crafty rabbit, it directly rushed out of the main hall. Boom! A hole was knocked open in the temple's wall, and the statue madly ran, actually wanting to escape. Yuji Tian patted his forehead and rubbed his temples, not daring to believe that this was real. The statue was without a doubt a god race, but it was actually beaten by Tang Zheng to the point where it threw away its armor and fled like a stray dog. Where was the dignity of a god? It turned out that a god also knew fear and was also afraid of death. The many divine envoys of the Shinto sect also saw this scene, and their eyes were wide open, their jaws almost falling to the ground. What is that? The statue. It seems to be the statue in the main hall. The statue is alive. Why is there an extra hole in its chest? It seems to be running away. This scene had a great impact on them. It simply subverted their worldview. Where do you think you're going? Suddenly, there was an angry shout, like a sudden clap of thunder. A figure chased out of the temple, holding a sword in his hand, majestic and awe-inspiring. Tang Zheng. All of the divine envoys were greatly shaken. It was actually Tang Zheng who was chasing after the statue. This was too shocking. They looked at the statue to the left and looked at Tang Zheng to the right, only to feel that the sky was spinning and the earth was spinning, causing them to feel dizzy. Seeing Tang Zheng chasing after it, the statue was scared to the point where its face turned ashen, but it was so tall that it was like a live target. The sword flashed and directly chased over. The sword light went straight in and was about to cut him in half at the waist. Suddenly, the statue's body flashed and actually shrunk. The statue shook its body and became the size of a normal person. Moreover, it became a living person with flesh and blood. Chapter 1889. The idol transformed into a living person and looked around in panic. Tang Zheng chased after him relentlessly and shouted, "You can't escape. Why don't you stay and answer a few of my questions? I'll give you a quick death." The idol didn't even look back as he said in a trembling voice, "If I don't run, am I supposed to wait for death? Which rock did you pop out from? You're so powerful that you dare to chase after a divine race." The idol felt a headache coming on and was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He was a good idol in the Shinto sect and was worshipped with fireworks. This was a job that many divine races had done before. The other divine races passed this time peacefully. Only he was so unlucky to have encountered such a ruthless character. He wanted to fight the other party head-on, but he wasn't a match for Tang Zheng. He admitted defeat and wanted to run. Tang Zheng also chased after him relentlessly and didn't give him a chance to escape. What would happen to the divine race's face if a divine race was forced to run away? The idol really wanted to cry, but had no tears. He felt that he had been wronged. One in front and one behind, They flew in circles around the 9 peaks of the Shinto sect. There were spatial restrictions all around the sect. With pursuers behind the idol, he had no intention of breaking the restrictions and running away. Thus, he could only run for his life in this small world of the Shinto sect. Sword glints tore through the sky and chased after the idol. Occasionally, the sword glints would leave a wound on the idol's body. The idol cried out miserably as if his but was on fire. There was no longer any trace of the divine race's high and mighty aura. The others were already dumbfounded, their jaws almost falling to the ground. How can a god be so weak? The image of a god in many people's hearts collapsed. Tears flowed out of their eyes as their mentality collapsed. Yuji Qian came to and wiped the corners of his eyes. His palms were wet. His mentality was similar to that of the entire Shinto sect. Don't look at how Tang Zheng had said 1,000 times that he wasn't in a hurry to see this scene. They truly realized that gods were no longer high and mighty. Gods could also be defeated and even killed. Tang Zheng looked at the subtle reactions of the divine emissaries. How could he not know what they were thinking? He had deliberately chased after the idol and didn't kill it in one blow. Of course, this was also the effect he had expected. Now, it seemed to have worked. The effect was obvious. Then the statue would have completed its mission. "Stop right there," Tang Zheng bellowed. His voice was like thunder, deafening and making many oracles with low cultivation dizzy. He almost fainted. Shua! The hidden mystic sword broke through the air and fell from the sky, as if it had split the space into two. It blocked the front of the statue, forcing him to stop. The statue was stunned. It stared at the sword in a daze. He had already determined that he was not a match for Tang Zheng. Seeing this sword strike, he was even more certain of this. Immediately, he despaired. The hidden, profound sword stood in front of him like a natural moat, making him unable to cross it at all. "You are the Divine King?" The statue looked at Tang Zheng in shock and asked, "Divine King?" Tang Zheng was moved. He was clearly in the Divine Emperor realm, but the statue had mistaken him for the Divine King realm. It seemed that his combat power was not weaker than the average Divine King. Maybe it's because I not only cultivated the new Heaven Book, but also the Heavenly God technique. With both, my power is stronger than the average Divine Emperor. That's why he had this misunderstanding. Tang Zheng analyzed secretly. No matter what, this is a good thing. Tang Zheng smiled, but to the statue, it was like a wolf grandmother. Moreover, Tang Zheng's smile made the statue's last hope vanish, because Tang Zheng had admitted that he was in the Divine King realm. As a Divine Emperor realm statue, how could he be a match for Tang Zheng? The statue was frightened and asked with trepidation, "What do you want to ask?" "That's more like it. If you insist on not cooperating, you will be the one to suffer in the end." Tang Zheng said with a smile, "Why did you turn into a statue here? What mission do you have?" Tang Zheng already had a guess, but he wanted to verify it through the statue. Every few years, the Divine Realm will choose a divine race to come to each world and turn into a statue to receive incense and worship. This way, they can monitor this world and keep everything under the control of the divine race. Moreover, they can guarantee that the power of faith will be continuously sent to the Divine Realm. The statue said while suppressing his fear, carefully sizing up Tang Zheng. "He's actually a human who cultivated to become a god. He's even more powerful than me, a divine race." "How did he do it?" "He's simply a freak," the statue secretly criticized. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. The statue's words coincided with his guess. He continued to ask, "How does the Divine Realm choose who to be a statue?" Although the statue looked high and mighty, it was actually a coolie. Because it was confined to a temple, it did not have the freedom of the divine race in the Divine Realm. Therefore, Tang Zheng asked this question. The statue's cheeks turned red and it stammered, not knowing how to answer. "There's hope." Tang Zheng's expression darkened. "You're not going to answer?" The statue looked at Tang Zheng nervously, as if it had completely thrown caution to the wind. It said resentfully, "The divine race's candidates are all people with low cultivation and no power or influence in the divine realm. Ha ha ha. Tang Zheng laughed loudly and said, as expected of coolies. The divine race's high officials and dignitaries, those with power and influence, don't need to be turned into statues. Only an unlucky person like you would be like this. The statue's face turned red, and it lowered its head in shame. The others seemed to have long since become numb. No matter what shocking words the statue said, they would not have much of an extreme reaction. There were actually so many inside stories among the divine race. Many people had a feeling of sudden realization and stared at the statue without blinking, as if they wanted to know more about the divine race from it. The reverence in the hearts of the divine envoy for the divine race was melting little by little, like ice melting. Tang Zheng looked at the statue's reaction, and an idea came to him. He asked with interest, "You should have your own name, right?" The statue said, "Of course I have a name. I am Enhai. Is there something special about this name?" The divine race has 4 great surnames. All of the divine race come from these 4 great surnames: En, Ji, Si, and Hui. I am from the En family, Enhai replied. So it is made up of these 4 great surnames. That is unexpected. Your status in the En family is low, and you have failed your duty. Do you know what will happen to you when you return? Tang Zheng asked with a half-smile. Enhai's face was ashen. He stammered, not knowing how to answer. I will give you a clear path, Tang Zheng said. What path? Enhai hurriedly asked. The divine race has always liked to enslave other races. I think it is time for you to have a taste of other races. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed as he said. Enhai thought of a possibility and shouted, You want me to be a slave? Can I? Tang Zheng asked. Using the divine race as slaves, turning the divine race into slaves. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.